Let me begin with the session. I've titled the session as Crafting a Speech A to Z. And what I'm going to do is sharing my 9-step framework about how I go about drafting my speeches, be it a Toastmaster speech, which is 5 to 7 minutes, or a keynote address, which is 20 minutes, or a seminar, which is 1 hour, or a workshop, which is much longer than that. I apply the same principle when I go about building or crafting the programs that I do. And that is what I'm going to share with you all today. But before I begin, let me all ask you, what makes a speech remembered or impactful? From your experience, whatever speeches that you have been inspired for, or you think, okay, this is something. What made that impact on you? I would like you to answer that. You can just unmute and speak or use a chat option, whatever you're comfortable.
If something is learning, take away from that speech.
Interesting. Takeaway. Thank you. Thank you, Navneet, for that. Who else?
When
A
there's
story.
an
If
emotion
it's
there,
emotional,
Okay, who was the other person? Pavan and Nandana. I'm not sure if you're brothers and sisters, but the answer was same. If there is an emotion in it. Thank you for that.
and also
something
if
is
there's a
inspiring.
story, also if there's a story that we can connect to.
Interesting. Thank you.
If
Thank you, Nandana, for that.
something-
Achyut.
if something is inspiring,
Inspiring. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? I can see in the chat the
Something
connect
new.
story. Lakshmi,
Something
go
new we
ahead.
are learning. Something we are new learning.
Okay, something you're learning. Now comes the important question. You could have the best speakers, best knowledgeable people in the world delivering a speech, and yet, they fall flat sometimes. They have the message, they have the knowledge, they have the idea, and yet, it doesn't connect, it doesn't inspire, it doesn't leave an impact. Why?
It should
There's
be
no
authentic.
connect with the audience.
No
No,
connect with the audience. Venu?
It should be authentic.
Authentic, wonderful. So I could be sharing something what Benjamin Franklin has said or Albert Einstein has said, but if it is not what I feel or what I have done, and I'm just sharing it, just using my lips and the voice to share their message, it might not resonate. Wonderful. Thank you for that, Venu.
And also, Rahul, I think it should reach the right target audience. I mean, if audience is not right and your content goes different, then I think it's difficult for them to understand however much inspiring or however much great
Interesting.
the
Thank you.
information.
Audience. Interesting point. These are all inputs that I'm gathering because frankly, I don't need to do this workshop. The answers are coming right from you and you know it all. What I'll be doing though is putting a framework in place so that next time when you get on to sit and write a speech or prepare for any instance, not just Toastmasters. I'm not going to limit here for Toastmasters alone. Any instance that you're going to deliver a speech and go and talk, be it 2 minutes or 20 minutes. This is a framework that can help you in putting the pieces in their place so that the end result is what you want. Because we are masters. Most of us are masters in different elements. But what makes a speech impactful, like each one of y'all said, are these fine details which make it possible and make it impactful. Now the question, how many of y'all have experienced this situation where you sit on to write a speech? You sit to write a speech and right after 1 hour, 2 hours, 6 hours, you're staring still at a blank paper. Raise your hand if you've experienced this. Interesting. Thank you for that. Even after 16 years of experience in delivering seminars and workshops, I too have these instances when I'm just staring at what to write, how to write, what should I be sharing. And that I'm telling you after knowing the parts which are there, because in totality, you just look at the end result of standing up on that stage or whatever how are you going to deliver that speech. In totality, the entire process is overwhelming in nature. Be it a 5 to 7 minute speech in Toastmasters, everyone has the challenges to begin in that process because they look at that end result, that picture which is there while they're standing on that stage, talking, listening, seeing people staring at you, not sure how they're going to receive it, and the host of questions that come into picture while you are working on drafting that speech in itself. And so the thought that I had was, why not break down this process into parts which can help us get the end result as is? How many of y'all are into dancing or any skill that you have learned? Have you observed how they teach dance to a person who doesn't know dance? Have you been forced to dance in a wedding of your cousin or someone? Look at how they tell you. Take the hand, move the leg. Now combine them together. There you have your step. The beauty is because we can learn anything and everything if we break it into the parts which are involved in it. Speech writing is pretty much this. It is both an art and a science because I've seen people just standing up on the podium and deliver a message without any body language, without any transition, or without any specific idea that they went into it prepared, because that is an art. Of how you're touching lives, how you're impacting people is an art as much as it is a science. If it was a purely an art, I won't be sitting here and talking to you today, because I'm going to talk about the science of it. I can't be training you on the art side of it in a matter of 40 minutes or 50 minutes. I'll be talking to you the science of it, through which once the science is in place, you can bring in your creativity, your leverage of the artistic side that you have in delivering a message. I've delivered speeches where I've sung a song. I've delivered speeches where I've given a shairi in between. I've delivered speeches which are humorous, which are serious, which are informative, which are of all kinds. But for all of them, the underlying idea is the science is in place, the creativity is where each one of us, right now, Nandana, Venu, Ajay, Ramesh, everyone, at the end of this session, you won't be delivering a speech like I am doing. You'll be delivering a speech with the parts, with you into the picture, with the way you want it to be done, not what I am doing or the way I am doing it. Because each one of us is an artist in ourselves, and the way we can express is purely based on how we can do it. Now, here's a disclaimer before I get into the science part of it or the details of what I want to share. These are my learnings, and each one of us have a certain way of doing things, and there is no hard, fast rule that this is how it is to be done. What I'll be sharing is based on my experience, and you could have a difference in the approach you go through it. That is your creative leverage, and something works for you, something works for me. We will all have those differences, and we need to appreciate that. Rather than looking at the differences, we need to appreciate that this is what works for me. The end result is what works for you. The idea is what works for you is the takeaway that I want you all to have from today's session. There could be 10 ideas that I'm talking of, but if 5 click with you, I'm more than happy with that. Even if 2 click with you, you're going away on a Sunday morning after the effort that you're here. If you're going away with 2 takeaways from the session also, I'm happy. It need not be that you have to resonate with every idea that I'm sharing. So the disclaimer, bring in yourself to the picture, see what can work and what may not work for you. So the agenda, as I told, is I'm going to share a 9-step framework through which you can look at the parts and how you can build in your story. And how do we build ideas? So one thing I've always been surprised is about how and what idea to begin with should we deliver a speech on. What are your thoughts? What are the speeches that you have delivered up until now? On what thoughts? Many times you are stuck. There are people on the other 2 extremes. One extreme, I don't have any idea at all on what can I deliver a speech on. On the other extreme, we have someone who's saying that I have so many ideas, but I'm not sure which one to deliver the speech on, which one will be more impactful, which one has more substance. So there are 2 extremes. Which extreme have you find yourself often? The one with too many ideas or the one with no ideas? Quickly, Ajay.
See, basically, you should speech based on the objectives.
Interesting. Okay.
So having too many ideas are there always whenever we start writing any speech. But the thing is, framing them in a proper manner, that doesn't happen. So the puzzling kind of things happen and it becomes, not useful for us.
Last mein khichdi ban jati hai, and I know
Right.
I've been there. Navneet.
Right.
Yeah, initially, suppose I start some speech, I do not have much of ideas, but once I start writing, thinking, I land up with so many ideas.
Interesting. So how do you choose what idea are you beginning with?
I see which is relevant to my objective, which is relevant to my authenticity, and which is something I can give to some audience. 3 points.
Interesting. Thank you. Mallikarjun, you had to share something?
Yeah. when I sit for writing speeches, I get a lot of ideas I'll have. But once I start, I think whether this will work or not. Once you start writing, we don't get the points. And I feel whether others will, whether this is having some substance or whether it will hold the audience. A lot of doubts I'll have. Topics we will select. For example, I thought of writing something about Corona speech or little short stories, 2-3 stories. But when you sit, you find it difficult to, you will have ideas, but when you sit to write, you find it difficult to have a proper ideas in a proper way. So we struggle for that, for writing a single speech.
Getting into the detail element of it. Okay, I'll just request anyone over here to just put it in the chat on one idea that you're working on right now or you feel you want to write a speech on, so that I can just see if it's possible for me to build on that rather than just talking on a generic note. Thank you, Murli. I'll be using that example of on Corona as an example. I want to write a speech on Corona. So that I'll be using that as an example. Anyone else has any ideas, please put it in the chat and let's get going now.
Everyone is a leader.
Yeah, everyone is a leader. Wonderful. Interesting. Thank you, Venugopal. That's a very interesting topic. And like icebreaker, again, an interesting thing. That's everyone is a leader is such a topic where I believe if I begin to write on that for 5 to 7 minute speech, I'm sure I'm going to have a content for speaking for 24 hours, and I have to make sure I have to bring that down to a 5 to 7 minute impactful speech. That is also a challenge. Interesting challenges in life. Thank you for these wonderful topics. I believe we can use a bit of all these stories or examples that you are thinking of right now and see how the 9-step framework can help you get going in it. How you can engage into building and writing and drafting that speech. Please note one more thing that I wanted to give as a disclaimer. Speech delivery is a different ball game altogether from drafting a speech. It takes two to tango. Both are equally important. But here for today's session and for the paucity of time that we have, I'll be focusing on only the drafting the speech part of it. So please note, I'm not focusing on the delivery or how you are going to deliver the speech, because that happens and that is another element of development that we can work on. But that is not my focus for today's session. It's going to be largely about how you can draft the speech. With that, let's get going into the 9-step framework that I was talking about. The first and foremost thing, why are you here?
To learn new things.
What made you join here today to today's session?
Will to learn.
Pawan?
To craft the speech.
To craft the speech. Who else? Mulidhar, go ahead.
Yeah, to learn how to make a speech, what are the important elements, how to draft a good speech.
Interesting. Nandana?
I think the objective is so is so insightful that we wanted to see what we can gain from here, because every opportunity presents itself with some learning.
Interesting. Uma Natraj in the chat says, what's in it for me? Something which you may help me. Interesting. Thank you. The reason why a poster with a title was shared to you before the session and what the session is going to be about is precisely for this. I don't want a 10-year-old coming here to listen to mathematics class. I'm not looking for someone to join here to listen about life philosophy. What am I here for? That is the question that is what begins your preparation. A lot of you have already mentioned that. Audience connect. Who is your audience? Why is it that they are listening to you? And what is it that you want them to think? We often say crafting a speech A to Z. The Z is the drafted end result of your speech. But the beginning of any draft is from Z. It's from the end. What is it that you want to accomplish by delivering this speech? What is that one line? If I ask who said challenges in life, Uma Natraj, what is it that you want the audience to take away in one line? Venu sir, with your idea, everyone is a leader. What is that one line that you can say that is the end result of your speech?
The moment after completion of this speech, they need to follow you.
They need to follow you or your message?
That's what the message.
There's a difference. I'll come to that also, because there's a very big difference between being inspired by who someone is and being inspired by who or what the idea was. Because I've seen a lot of people with a lot of stage presence, a lot of excitement, a lot of engagement, having a wonderful delivery, and people are inspired by him. After 2 days, if you ask what was the message, I don't remember. How many of you all have come across instances like that, where you're blown by how it was delivered, but the end of it is after 1 week you don't remember what was he speaking, but you remember the, I won't say drama or antiques, but the way it was delivered. So you could learn how to deliver a message from someone whom you remember them, but you could remember, if you are not able to remember the impact, the lesson, the takeaway, that is where the speech also has a flaw in it. So the first question that I asked you is, begin with your why. Do not get into writing the speech. What is the subject? What are the stories? What are the examples? Without having your why clear whenever you're drafting a speech. Why is it that I'm doing or delivering this speech? What is the impact that I want to leave? Because that why is your anchor for your entire journey from A to Z. Wherever you are lost, wherever you are questioning what next, how next, is it worth it, is it important, is there a priority, is this required, is it not required, for everything the answer lies in your why. What is it that you want to accomplish with this speech? What is your takeaway? What is the audience takeaway from your speech? That's the one line that I want to begin with as a first step of this framework. With this why, please make sure you are getting the setup right. Today we are in a virtual space. If I'm delivering the same speech in the physical space, it will be different. The content will be different. The delivery will be different. My engagement will be different. How I can pull someone up will be different. The entire preparation and what I have in store today, if you ask me to deliver the same program tomorrow in a physical space, it will be different. You have to put the setup in your mind where you're delivering, whom you're delivering to. The WH questions, what is your topic? Where are you delivering? In an online space, I don't have an opportunity to walk around like I would do on the stage and talk to you and show you my confidence by moving on stage. I'm limited to this space. So my content and the way I'm delivering that content changes. So precisely the reason, get an idea of your setup, what, where, when, how, and who the audience is. I had a few years back an instance where I was delivering a program where I was invariably talking to students, 10 to 12-year-old kids, and my speech had jokes about marriage and husband-wife. Fell flat, failed miserably because I did not know who the audience was. Where are you delivering? In what context are you delivering? Are the important questions. As simple as someone shared an icebreaker speech. Even for an icebreaker speech, if you're delivering it to a generic audience, to a student, to a person who's into 60s, to a business community, your icebreaker speech changes. The way you present your speech, because recently I was there at a school where they told me suddenly there was a speaker dropout and please deliver your icebreaker speech. I modified the content of my speech, which was skewed towards my professional development and my career and a lot of work. I shifted the entire anchor to my school life, because that is what will resonate with the audience. That is what will connect with the audience. I can't be telling a student about the challenges in the corporate world, the challenges that I faced, the way I faced and scaled up in my corporate life, which will be relevant to them. So the point in the first step of the framework is get your one-line statement to what you want to accomplish with your speech. What is that audience should be going back with your speech? Second is the setup. Be aware of every detail wherever it is possible. I don't know who all are joining in the audience today. It could be 30-year-old, it could be 15-year-old. But if that is the case, be sure your presentation is generic in nature so that everyone connects. I run an initiative called as Speak Up Club, which has been running for the past 82 sessions now, 83 last night. In that setup, we have people as young as 8-year-old and as old as 75-year-old joining the sessions. And I have to prepare content which is relevant for both of them, which is impactful for both of them. And that is where keeping your audience in your mind, who are you talking to, becomes of paramount importance. Because for your entire purpose, why you're speaking, if this falls flat, nothing in the next process and equally the delivery will fall flat and you will fail miserably. Because you have to have a clarity on why you're speaking and whom you're speaking and the WH questions. That's the first step. Once you have the first step, I'll challenge you to tell your one-line statement to a kid. In the first step, I'll challenge you to tell your one-line objective or takeaway from your speech to a kid. And if the kid asks, what? Go back and sit and write that statement again. Go back and sit and write that statement again. Because if there is no clarity there, it is going to end up with no clarity for you and eventually no clarity for the audience on what they're going to do or what they're going to take away from you. With that, let's move to the second step of the framework. Once you have the broad objective, an objective can be met with 100 points, with 100 stories. As an example, Venu's topic, everyone is a leader. I could be having a story about a political leader, a story about my experience as a school leader, or my instance where I was a leader for my own life, or a leader in a corporate world, or how I inspired by not having a title as a leader and yet inspiring. The question is, once you have the broad objective as the first step, focus on what points will bring me to this conclusion. What points, what broad pointers? I'm not still telling you to write the speech. I'm talking about broad pointers which will make people learn or have this takeaway which you have in the first line. That being said, you will have sometimes 1 or 2 pointers and sometimes 20 pointers. Like I said, there's no rule what is right or what is wrong. The only thing is, with your objective in your mind and with the statement that you have, look at prioritizing which one is relevant to this speech. Which one is relevant to this speech and which one can land in a 5 to 7 minute speech. If you're giving a keynote address, as well, I would say have these. How many you choose and what you choose to be a part of your story is a decision that you have to make, and how much substance you have in that is what will make you decide the 2 or 3 pointers that you have. In icebreaker speech equally, people often end up saying or making an icebreaker speech a chronology: school, college, job, family, hobbies. Why does it have to be a chronology or a standard structure? How many times have you heard the introduction of people? How many times do you forget names of people? Are you seriously interested in that? Hi, my name is Rahul Jain. I'm an entrepreneur and I'm working here. I have a family of 2 people, 2 kids. After 10 minutes, if I ask you what is my name, you won't remember it. It's because what you have put in your introduction, I'm not saying this is not important. These are covered, these are to be told, but this in itself should not become the subject of your speech. What makes people remember any speech is its non-linearity. If people are expecting this, they are already fallen into a trap of waiting to listen to this. What has helped you remember or recollect a lot of speeches is not the linearity. It's the non-linearity of how it is going and telling a different story than what you already knew. So the second step is getting to the stories, to the ideas, again, not the detail of it, getting to the stories and the ideas which will help you in getting this takeaway that you have in the first step as your message. So if you have 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever it is, put them there. No issues in putting them there. And then choose which ones are the most important and which you'd like to share. That's about the second part. Then comes the third part, where there's something interesting called as the power of 3. How many of you all are aware of power of 3? Yes, Uman.
Yeah, suppose you tell anything, if you tell it in 3 ways, as first point, second point, third point, so it always catches the attention of people.
Interesting.
Like,
Pawan. Thank you, Mama. I'll come back to that. Yes, Pawan.
Yeah, anything is 3 is a magic number. So if you say everything in 3 points or max 4 points, it connects to the audience.
Interesting. Thank you, Pawan, for that. Indeed, it is a magic number. Navneet, go ahead.
Suppose I want to throw a message. So before that, I will use 2 similes or examples, then set the path to the audience and then throw my message. So this is called rule of 3.
Interesting. The power of 3, rule of 3, it has been used and built up in different ways. In effect, what they say is 3 is a magical number, 1 is too less, 5 is too much. Whenever you have to make an impact, when you have people process their ideas and thoughts, and the way we process ideas, it's in multiples of 3. And it is said, when you work around this number, this magical number, it is impactful. It has much higher chance of resonating and staying back and sticking in the minds of people when it's power of 3. Not only is it just about the mind science, it is also about, like Navneet mentioned, use a setup where if I tell life is challenging, I talk about one instance where my life was challenging. Will you believe it? I talk about 3 instances of where my life is challenging. One could be anyone can have it. It's just coincidence that you're looking at it. But if I show or talk of the same instance, everyone is a leader in 3 instances of my own life, or however you want to present it. In 3 instances, it kind of reiterates to the listener that it is not a one-off situation. It is being backed by the theory, or whatever takeaway that the person is being telling is backed by different instances in different places or different times, or however you're presenting it. That is where in the substance, once you have the broad pointers, look at how you are using the power of 3 to make your message impactful. Look at how you can have 3 stories or 3 pointers or 3 instances where people can be hit on their mental level of this is a pattern, this is not a one-off instance, and that builds your credibility. One instance might not build your credibility. So often a case, because of this rule of 3, people often use 3 stories or 3 instances or 3 timelines where they're talking about their story. And in that also, leveraging further on the power of 3, in each point, have 3 more subsets which are reiterating to that point. So this is largely to do with informative speeches, where we are talking of specific structured information. If it's not an informative speech, it is an inspirational speech or a motivational speech or a humorous speech, you could as well skip the rule of 3 inside of it. But on the broader subsector level, you can use and leverage the power of 3, have 3 stories, have 3 instances, which will help you in connecting to your takeaway. Now, when I'm talking of 3, here we get started with the detailing of your speech. Here, where we're talking of building the substance, the language, the lines, the build-up of how you're going to present that point. To make it simple for you, once you have chosen the 3 broad pointers, don't look at it as a speech which is 5 to 7 minutes as a 5 to 7 minute speech. Look at it as 3 table topics of 2 minutes each. Now tell me, can you write a speech for 2 minutes or not? On one broad pointer that you have selected each. Move back from the overwhelming feeling of 7 minutes I have to stand on stage and talk. Look at how many instances have you had of standing up on table topics and delivering a good speech, decent speech. That is without preparation. If I were to tell you, do a preparation for a topic which I'm giving you and tell me after 5 minutes, you will be able to do it. So imagine the power of 3 stories where you're getting a timeline of 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, the broad pointers and how it is leading to that message. Break it down, break your speeches. We'll come back to where it is forming again, but the preparation, the step forward is to break up and start working on these 2-minute speeches that you have for each of these stories. That's about how you can build the content. And please note, start working on randomly, like we just speak up in the table topics. It's not about that. There needs to be a proper formulation of where you're bringing in your language, sentence, formation, words. What are you going to put? Put that down. Just having a broad pointer in your mind can be completely butchered by the words that you use, which come randomly to you. As a habit, if you give me a word and tell me to speak on it, I'll be able to speak. But if I'm able to prepare on it, the choice of words, the sentences, and the way I'm going to present it is going to be completely different. So please make sure you're getting down to writing. On an average, it is said, as a person, I speak at 120 words per minute. So all I have to do is, for each of those broad pointers, I have to write a speech for 200 words. Get down to that writing and you'll find the substance and the formation and the changes. How many you send WhatsApp messages? How many times have you typed the entire message? No. ये पता नहीं कैसे लगेगा, क्या होगा पता नहीं. Will it be read right? Will it hit the wrong chords? We put it back and we type again. The mess up happens when you lift that call and tell the same thing. You will goof up. A lot of our mess up, a lot of our goof ups happen because we are not preparing for what we have to tell. Writing down, typing it up will help you in preparing for what you want to tell. And while you write that, you will have an opportunity to reflect. This is not feeling good. This is not seeming good. And you get a chance to correct it. And that's the reason it is said, write your speeches. Write down those 2-minute speeches. With that, we come to the next step. The next step is where we're talking of, we have talked about the body now, the broad structure of what you're speaking, the takeaways and everything is being built up. Please note, we have not begun with the opening of the speech. We have begun with the meat of the speech. People often end up beginning with the opening and being stuck with the opening and how to get into the body. And that is where they mess up. You begin with what is the meat of your story. Once this is built, the opening and the closing are a natural extensions to your real meat of your speech. And that will flow logically when you have this clear. Suddenly some people say, this quote is good, I want to begin with this speech, I want to begin with this speech, I want to begin with this. They write down that quote and then suddenly start wondering, what should be the takeaway from this? Idea अच्छा है, quote अच्छा है. Story क्या बताऊं? 3 stories कहां से लाऊं? Opening तो ठीक है, last में conclusion में वापस यही quote बोलूं क्या? Don't get fixated to the opening or the closing. Fixate to the message, fixate to the first point, which is your takeaway. And everything that you're doing up until now is being connected back to that takeaway that you have. Now let's get into a little bit detail. So what will come first, the closing or the opening? Not in the speech. What should come first? Now that you have got the entire meat of your speech, that 6 minutes, largely the 6 minutes part of your speech is ready. What should come next, the opening or the closing? Any guesses?
Why? Always should be why. Why it is right. So it should be ending.
Interesting. Ria, go ahead.
The closing.
Closing. Like I told you, I don't need to do this session here. People are smart enough. Now they get the flow of it. Once you have the stories, it logically flows to where you want to end. And that is where closing is important. Now the important question, how should the closing be? How long should the closing be? Let me all ask you. If you are giving a 5 to 7 minute speech, assuming you're targeting 7 minutes, if your content is 5.5 to 6 minutes, how long should your closing be?
30
in seconds. 30 seconds. Interesting. Anyone else? Ramesh?
1 minute to 30 seconds.
1 minute to 30 seconds. Lakshmi Narayana.
1 minute.
Interesting. 1 minute.
I'm not too sure about the timing, Rahul, but I think what pays is to quickly summarize what all you have taken the audience through, and then maybe end it with something that sticks with them.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Nandana. Wonderful pointers, everyone. The idea is more often than, yes, Navneet, go ahead.
3 lines.
3 lines. Interesting.
Rule of 3. Rule of 3.
Okay, interesting. We can use that. Yes, Nikhil.
I would say probably with the speech itself, they should be able to get the message and quickly in 5 seconds say it off.
Like I told, I don't need to deliver the speech. I don't need to do this program. The idea, folks, the purpose of closing is to reiterate the message. It is not explaining the message. It is not summarizing the message. It is not about telling one more story. Closing is the smooth finish of your speech. If your 3 stories, 1, 2, 3, if your information 1, 2, 3 hasn't put across the message to the audience, your closing won't save you. The closing won't save you. So as a closing, you can have possibly call to action based on your learning. If you're talking about icebreaker speech, this is how my life has been curated or built based on these instances or these experiences, or talking about everyone is a leader. That is how I believe. You are a leader on how you act in the moments which are critical. Takeaway, summary, however it is, the point is it has to be crisp. And it is like not telling a summary of what you have said. It should not become like it is. I often tell this to people. I'm going to crack a joke. And then I explain the joke. If your joke hasn't made people laugh, the explanation will make people cry. The idea is the joke in itself should be leading to people to laugh. If you're explaining the joke was not impactful. The 3 stories, the meat of your speech wasn't impactful. So logically, ask for call to action. Different people have different strategies. There's nothing right or wrong over here. But the idea that I want you all to take away in the step 4, which is the closing, is what is it that you're leaving the audience with? What is it that you want the audience to do with all that you have done, all you have told? Is it awareness? Is it action? Is it just a change in perspective? What is it that you're trying to accomplish with your speech? The closing should be a smooth transition to that element. That is what will work wonders, not telling the joke again or explaining the joke again. So have pointers. Like you said, Navneet said, you can have a power of 3. I would like you to start dish, dish, dish. And there it is done. Depending on the type of speech, you can have the impactful impact on how you're doing it. Sometimes leaving the audience with a question about themselves is also a good takeaway. I'm not telling leave the audience for more knowledge or that something was missing. I'm not telling you to create a Bahubali 1 where for almost 2 years people are waiting, why did Kattappa kill? I want you to focus on the message where people can reflect and become a part of your story. What if this happened to you? Have you been where I was? Benjamin Franklin said, some people die at the age of 25, but aren't buried until they turn 75. Where are you right now? Close. Look at how the end should be the punch or the hard-hitting reflection on what you have as a takeaway. You can just give plain takeaway, call to action, or you can leave the question in the mind of the audience. That is what will make you ponder. The audience will keep pondering. These are the points. Where is the leader in me? What instances have I missed on being a leader? We talk of Corona. What story do I have about Corona? If someone is talking of the positives of Corona as an example, have I looked at Corona in a different way? Look at the blessings that I've got out of Corona. Look at how your messages, the stories which you have as a meat of your speech, driving into the closing logically. Let's move to the next step, which is the opening. How many movies have you seen where they show you the last scene of the movie where someone was killed, or like if you have seen the movie 83 where the catch of Vivian Richards is caught, and the beginning of the movie is there. The purpose of opening is to bring your audience glued to your story of what is coming up. Depending on the type of speech, again, I'm not telling that every speech has to have this. All I'm telling is that you have to understand what your speech is about, and depending on that, the closing and the opening should logically flow. I had a speech where I had this about living in spirit, about enjoying everyday moment. I began the speech with a simple statement. The biggest mystery of my life was the day I was born. What followed after that was a meat. And towards the end, so where people often say you can use a full circle idea, begin with a question at the opening and give the answer, not giving the answer, not telling the answer. Your story is the answer, and logically closing the speech with that question again. Here, the biggest mystery in my life was the day I was born. The closing of my speech was the same logic. Does it really matter on what day I was born in my life? Or you can have something called as a very famous technique of that people use, something called as the anchor line, which connects every part of your speech. Where we are talking of, I've had this speech where I've asked, how many of you believe practice makes a man perfect? Interesting, interesting. I don't. 3 stories. The closing, do you still believe practice makes a man perfect? My entire story was about the other side, the anti side of it. So you see how beautifully the meat is there. Now, based on this, you're building the closing and the opening. You can use the combination of opening and closing to tell people that here I'm ending now. That is also one thing. Otherwise, people are left wondering, he didn't tell about why he didn't know his birthday. Why he was not clear about his date of birth. You can use different techniques. All I'm saying is that the opening is the punch, the closing is the punch. You can use quotes, questions, humor, or a suspense, or however you want to begin the opening so that people get glued to what you're going to share. Why is it that he thinks that practice doesn't make us perfect? We have been taught all our life that. Tuck, tuck, tuck. 3 stories which tell you that it is not. Let me just share you one story which I tell in that speech of mine, which is about, I have a son. He's been practicing ABCD for the last 6 months now. And yesterday when he was attending his class, his teacher asked, tell me ABCD. He said, ABC, EFG. ABC, EFG. I asked him, how long have you been practicing this? I told him, ABC, D, E, F, G. And I went out. The next day, his teacher asked, tell me ABC. He said, ABC, E, F, G. Practice doesn't make one perfect. It only makes something that you do persistently permanent. Story 1. You move on to the next stories where you're talking about a corporate career or your thought or how you think and how your habit is what has led you to do the things, but it is not perfect. Perfect is getting it right. And then towards the end, I ask the same question. Do you still believe what you're practicing is making you perfect? People go back with a lot of thoughts on what all are they doing. Is it making them perfect or is it just become permanent for them? So I use that anchor line. Does practice make you perfect? After the first story, after the second story, after the third story, and finally hit the nail with leaving them with a question. So we are talking of how now we have got the body, we have got the opening and the closing. We are at step 5. Do you know why I have told step 1, 2, 3, 4? Any guesses on that?
You're making a sequence so that we can understand and learn.
You are falling into a pattern, or you are falling into a template that I have created. Opening is important, closing is important, body is important, purpose is important, that is important. By getting you into my story, into the flow in which I am going, I'm using this reference, step 1, step 2, step 3, to take you with me in my story. How many times have you seen someone is talking about their college time, a wonderful story, nostalgia, and then suddenly they talk about marriage, and then suddenly they talk about their kids? When I told you to prepare a 2-minute speech, now let's get back to that. A speech is a totality in itself. It is not 3 speeches individually. This brings me to the step 6, which is about the transitions you are having in one element to the other element, then to the next. Here, as an example for my speech, my project today, what I'm delivering today, I've used this 9-step framework. I have grilled 9-step, at least more than 30 times now. What does that do to you? You are still waiting. What is going to come up in 7, 8, 9? You are clear that, okay, we have got to 6 now. And on every transition, I'm telling, let's get to the next step. Others, you'll be confused between opening and closing and transition, where what came next, and you're not aware at all. The reason why I'm saying this is, get to the movement in your story, because you might be having every story in your mind clear and you know why it is coming where. But the audience is not aware of where is that childhood coming in from and then the marriage coming in from. You have to have that connecting statements on how you move from the opening to the body to the stories which are there and then to the conclusion. As an example, in an icebreaker speech, when you begin, you can just randomly have different segments of your story, or you can have, the year was 1986. In the remote village of Narsapur, I was born, blessed to a wonderful family and living after my sister, or however I want to put it. Then, rather than just jumping into, I did my schooling here, fast forward 10 years, 1996, based on the logical number which is there. Fast forward 1996. What am I doing that with you? I'm leading you from my birth to my schooling. As time passed by and I realized, I learned this lesson, I was hit with another roadblock. Next story. Then next story. Look at how you have to carry your audience, who's listening, carry their handhold them and move to the next story which you have to share. Because more often than not, people as an audience have a very easy choice of getting lost in the detail, in the question that you're sharing. They have a habit of getting lost to their world and they'll miss out on what you are going to share. And so it's very important to carry your audience with the transitions from opening to the body to the stories and to the conclusion. It's very important to use these connectors which are there to help carry the audience to the logical next step which you think it is. You think you know the logic there. The audience doesn't know, and that's the reason you need to have the connector over there. Here ends the large part of the science which is there in drafting a speech. Now comes the creative side of it. It is, let me share a few instances of how I go about doing things where it adds a sparkle to the speech. Again, I'm just sharing what works for me or what I do. I would want each one of you all to think of how creatively you can add music to your speeches. When I say music, I'm referring to the steps 7 of crafting a speech. You have got the entire opening, body, closing, and everything in place, the connectors in place, the transitions and everything in place. What makes you remember speeches is not the content alone, is not the content of what is being said alone. Have you observed how a lot of speakers have waves in their speeches? Doing the unexpected, adding to the emotion, overwhelming, and then dropping you down, and then taking up to the another story. Look at how you can just take an example of how movies work. Which movies have you not, I won't say inspired only, have you had the engagement with? It are those stories where the suspense has come in, how the transition has come in. There was one speech where I was working on talking about celebrating life. I was talking about how it is important to live our daily moments and every detail which is there. Gifting a flower to my wife without the Valentine in place, taking my mother for a candlelight dinner, surprising her. And then suddenly I talk about, but the thing which cemented my learning was death. Death. Then I go on to share the death story, or one story which talked about death. So you see how the emotion and the twist happens. People will stay glued to your speech based on the twists and not on the expected thing which was going to come up. If it is expected, there's no point you speaking. If they already know the suspense, if they already know the sequence of what you're going to share, why do they want to listen to you? They might want to listen to you for the authenticity, for the emotion, for the story that you have to bring in that. And that can be brought about with the waves, or as I call it, the music in the speech. When I'm referring to music, I often have these techniques where I look at twisting rather than having a uniformity, not just the voice modulation I'm talking of here. The story in itself has the twists, unexpected twists. You see how humor, why people laugh at humor? It's all about what you're expecting and what happened was the difference. That is where humor is created. Having humor in itself, your speech, you look at that element where you can bring in humor. After the opening of that speech, practice makes a man perfect. Woman, if you wish to, you can still listen. I believe you're already perfect. Is the humor element that I bring in. Again, let me tell you all, I'm not using my examples just to boast what I'm doing. They have their own place. I'm just using what worked for me, and possibly you can think of how it can bring about that element of music in your speeches. So focus on the music part, the engagement. How many of you all have used questions in your speeches and give a pause for people to come into your story, for them to be teleported into what you are experiencing by bringing in their emotions? They bring in their emotions and they become a part of your story. Whatever favorite speeches that you have, you talk of anything. I'm not talking of just standing up and delivering the speeches live in Toastmasters. I'm talking of any movie, any song. Look at where you become a part of that story is how you are feeling, how you are recollecting your story while listening to what is being said. How many of you all have been in pain and hurt to songs? While the normal times, you're just humming in the music, you're just enjoying the music. But the lyrics come into the picture when you want to experience, when you are getting words to what you're feeling. That is what speeches have to do. That is what speeches have to do. They are not just information or some story which is being told and someone is just listening. For it to have an impact, it has to have the engagement and connect with the audience. So when you tell, in my childhood, people are wondering about their childhood. When you say, I was bullied, people are remembering their stories of how they were bullied. When you talk of a romantic story, when you talk about death, people are recollecting their story while listening to what you're saying. That engagement is what makes it impactful. In that engagement, you're telling a story. They could have had a different ending, different perspective, different thought about what you shared. And that twist on what you learned could be the lesson for them to learn. Everyone in sync until here? So in speeches, in any other instances, wherever you're talking, remember to add elements, be it questions, quotes, engagement, humor. However you can bring people into your story is what is going to leave your story impactful, not you being remembered. You being remembered will be a natural extension of the impact that you have. If you have had the impact, people will remember you naturally. So focus on creating music in your story, be it with the emotion that you're saying, the way you're exhibiting, the way you're stopping, you're having that pause. Well, you've made a point where you know people are going to get deeper into their experiences. I've lost someone recently. Pause. People are reflecting and recollecting whom they have lost. They are having a surge of emotion while you're saying. But if you say, I recently lost someone, and what I learned is this, you're not giving the audience a chance to get into your story or bring their story into yours. That is what makes speeches click. This is the soul of music, soul of your speech. You might have seen people with no body language just standing up and delivering and talking, just standing up, no hand gestures, no movement, standing behind the podium and speaking, and yet leaving a mark because they have their soul in the story, and you are being teleported to that, or you're connecting to that message, not what is being said, but how you are coming into the part of the story, is where the entire difference is. This is the creative part of public speaking. You have a choice in the detail that you go in how you are bringing people into your story. So the next step, once we come to the entire feel and everything in place, now we're talking about you write a speech. You write a speech. I heard this from Aditya Maheshwaran, wherein he said this beautifully. I'm not sure whether it's by him or he's read it somewhere, but I heard this beautiful thing. You write a speech, and when you're writing a speech, you're writing for your eyes. You're reading a story. You're reading a speech. But when you deliver a speech, whom are you delivering to? You're delivering to your ears. So while you're writing a speech, you're writing it for the eyes. While you're delivering a speech, when you're speaking out a speech, you're delivering to the ears. And the language of eyes and ears is different. Whatever you have drafted, whatever speech that you have worked on, speak it out. Don't read. Speak it out. And in the process of speaking that speech, you'll realize the flaws which are there in your draft. Suddenly you'll feel, okay, this line isn't fitting in. This line is not coming logically. This is not feeling good. I'm talking about all those elements where once you have your draft ready, that is not your final draft. We are still at step 8. 7 is complete. We are working on step 8, where whatever you have written, I'm not saying by heart, just take that paper with your final version, read it out and record. I'm not talking about video recording. I'm not talking about building confidence here. I'm just talking about first space where you are recording your audio of how you're going to say that speech, and then listen to it. Now we are talking about how your speech is going to be delivered. When you listen to that, you'll realize the changes which have to be made, and make that logical changes. As a mentor, I've done this to my mentees. I tell all my mentees to do this. Whatever speech that they're drafting, whatever they're doing, share the end result of it. Share with me the audio recording of it. I'm not saying by hearting and all. Just share the audio recording of it, because that is how, if I close my ears, eyes, and just listen to what you're speaking, is it making an impact? Audio is for 2 reasons. One, I'm still not talking of delivering on stage. I'm talking of, we have the muscle memory which is there in the way we speak. In the way we speak, many a times, look at how we recollect certain things which were taught to us way back in the past, and just out of the flow, we can say those things. That is called the muscle memory of whatever we have learned. So whatever speech that you have, if you want to make sure you're in the flow of it while you're speaking, because your unconscious mind will also be operating the muscles and the way you're speaking. Right now, I've spoken for the last 1 hour, and let me tell you, over 40 minutes of what I've spoken is working on what I have been delivering for the last 16 years. Every minute detail of word and everything that I've talked right now is not a choice or scripted. I've been helped with the 16 years of practice that I've had until now. For your speeches, while you're ready, speak, see and speak, see and speak, record, listen. With that, you get the flow of how you're going to deliver. And standing on the stage, a lot of people tell about nervousness, forgetting a point here, there, and all those things. It's because it is not still tuned to your subconscious mind. That will happen when you have spoken, not read, not inside. Why do they, as kids, remember, why did they say when they were reading inside, I'm reading inside, I'm reading inside? Why did they say, speak it loud? Precisely the reason, when you speak it loud, you are engaging in building the unconscious mind. You tell me you can't do anything, I'll tell you, speak that loud for 1 day, 2 days, 1 week, 10 days. 11th day, even if I wake you up from the sleep, you'll be able to speak that. There are speeches which I've delivered for over 25 times because those are speeches which are something which are close to my heart. And I wanted to make sure that are impactful. And today there are instances where suddenly in a sudden meeting somewhere, they say that we have a speaker drop out. I tell I'll deliver my speech in 5 minutes preparation because they're a part of my story. It's just that I have to recollect the pointers which will bring me to that flow. This program, Crafting a Speech A to Z, this is my 6th time I'm doing this session. So a large part of it is already ingrained. I just have to make sure I'm using the examples like icebreaker, challenges in life to bring you into my story and what you are taking away from this. So that brings me to the last and the most important step of your speech. In Toastmasters, in contests, you might have heard this. Your speech begins the moment you give a non-verbal or verbal communication. How many of you all believe that is the right thing? Uma ma'am, Nikhil. You came to this session listening to the title of the program, Crafting a Speech. The impact started there. I gave my research and present project, which was titled My Third Child. I have only 2 legal children though. I've talked about speeches about the title of which is brings the audience to my story even before I speak. Your title is something which makes or breaks someone into your story even before you have spoken a word. I've had these instances where, as a part of the program Speaker Club that I run, I told you, there have been 83 sessions until last night. And each program, as much effort as it goes into building and developing the program, I make sure I make the effort in how it is being presented. The title of the program is the crucial part of the story. Because if that is exciting, people, even if they're not interested in something, looking at the title of that session, they'll be intrigued to come in and listen to what is happening. They go away with anything. I'm not talking about that. But the pitch that you create is not the opening of your speech. The pitch that you create is in the title of your speech, because the moment the title is told, or if there's an agenda which is circulated, which is a poster which is circulated, which has a title of your speech, that is your beginning of your speech. I had this title in recent contest, in Division E contest that I was contesting. My speech was about pause. My speech was about the pauses that we have in our conversations. Short pause, long pause, and all those things. The title of my speech was Pause. And when the contest chair announced the topic, Toastmaster Rahul, pause. Pause, Toastmaster Rahul. I used that title to pause for 5 seconds to begin my speech. And I cracked that into humor by telling that, contest chair, should I begin? You told me to pause. About the speech which I was talking of, it was a research and present project. So people are curious. In research and present, how did I get my third child into the picture? So that was a story about investing in gold. My third child. That's gold. A lot of people wanted to listen to my speech on that day because they were curious whether I'm going to reveal something sensational or not. But your speeches, the beginning is not the opening. It's the title that you give. Here, again, a creative leverage of how much you want to experiment with. Sometimes a bigger experiment can take people off altogether. So it's a calculated guess, because last time someone asked me, a complex title can lead to possibly distracting and getting the genuine audience to your speech. That can also be there. It's a calculated risk that you're taking. It's how what you believe is possible and how it is being perceived. That is what makes this work. So the last step which I'm talking about is get your title right. It's your program, it's your keynote address, it's whatever you're delivering. If you have an opportunity where you're giving a title to it, an announcement is going to happen beforehand, you have a chance. With that, I come to an end of the 9-step framework. And all I would say is that I hope this framework helps you. I'm not on how you're going to utilize. I use the same framework to work on a speech for 1 hour. I've used the same framework to work on a speech for over 30 days. The amount of detailing which you get into for every step of your speech is a choice that you make. I've cursed myself for sticking to the framework and investing so much into where the music will come, and wasted 15 days also sometimes. I would rather, sometimes I felt, rather let me give 1 day or 2 days and deliver the speech somewhere, and maybe by delivering, I'll get more ideas. While I'm delivering, I'll find my another cue to how to improve the speech. So the entire idea is about the effort that you're giving and the detailing that you're looking is directly linked to the importance of the speech that you're going to deliver. You could do 1 speech a day, investing 1 hour into the framework and getting your speeches ready. Or you could invest 7 days, 1 month, depending on the criticality of that speech. I've seen people contesting in international speech contests in different places, investing over 15 days to get the speech right. It is said that the World Championship of Public Speaking invested over 2 months to get that 1 7-minute speech ready, including the practice part of it and all. The choice is yours. It's a calculated guess where we're talking of how much detail you want to do in the speech. So with that, I would open it for question answers.
Yes, I have a question regarding transition.
Go ahead, sir.
How do I measure that my script is having well transition? How do I measure that my script is having good transition?
When you listen to your speech, which is a step 8, you'll realize one point is going to another, whether there's a logical flow to it or not. Or is it abrupt? From one point, you're suddenly shifting or jumping on to the next one. When you listen to that, you get largely a feel of whether it is logical or not. And even better, if you can have someone else, your mentor, your friend, listen to what you're sharing. That will help you in giving an idea whether the transitions are fine or not. Sometimes just a pause, a long pause is a good transition as well.
Okay. So actually, I did the first part, that listening to myself, but I didn't find, because it was written by me only.
Might be because you have read it, you are listening to it, you'll find it right.
Right. But second part, yeah, please continue.
Go ahead.
So, but the second part, if I give the speech or give my mentor, then he says that, okay, this is something like you are going to different directions. You are not smooth. But my question is remain unanswered. How do I do that? I know the result. I want to know the inputs. How to make, like you said, pause. That is one of the inputs for making transitions. What are the other parameters? Like, can I put quotes? Can I put stage choreography, like go to from left to left part of the stage.
Indeed. Because we are not talking about delivery. I didn't touch upon this thing, but using your stage presence is a very good technique when you don't want to have specific words or lines for transitioning from one point to another. Even in the virtual space, I've had this instance where I've delivered my speech like this, and like this. So when I move from one point to another, even in the virtual space, you have that opportunity. You have that opportunity to tell that I'm shifting to a different point or moving to the next logical point. So because we didn't deal with the delivery part of it, I didn't want to touch upon this. But yes, in the preparation, one element which I missed out was in the step 7, which we are talking of adding music. There is this element also on how you are using your body language or voice modulation to create the deeper impact of your message, of whatever you're saying. To create a deeper impact, you can use a voice modulation, stage presence, stage activity. I've seen a world championship speaker falling flat on the stage to just make his point, and the person stayed there for 10 seconds while people were bringing themselves into the story. So that is another technique in which you can use stage presence as a part of your transitioning as well.
Okay, thank you. My last question is,
yes,
how do this speech making or speech giving drafting will help my corporate session, corporate life? Like suppose in my office, I cannot start with the stories to tell the message.
Different places require different delivery, but depending on the audience, that's the reason the first step in Toastmasters, I should not say this, but a lot of people have ended up becoming dramatic performers more than what is required for the message. The subtleness which is required to deliver an impactful speech, people have confused that and added dramatics to their speeches. In the real world, if you start doing that thing, people are going to see the drama in it and not the message in it. So for your corporate world also, remember, even what we have talked right now here is not just about speeches. Even your interactions where you have to go and make a pitch to someone, maybe if you're going for if someone tells you tell me about yourself, that's a short 1.5 minute or 2 minute speech. Look at how you are adding music and the same things that we have discussed, the opening, the closing in the body, and how you're engaging in that. You can use this framework to build on that. Make sure, like the first point tells, keep the context in place. Stories, let me tell you, it's not about fiction. We are not telling about fiction alone over here. Fiction also sells. But in corporate, people will look at real stories, your personal stories, to build your credibility, to build your authenticity. You will have to bring in small instances where you have done something which you're trying to make a point about. That equally works in corporate world as well. I hope that answers you, Navneet.
Yes. Thanks a lot. The best part of this.
All I'm saying is keep the context in mind. If you're talking to a kindergarten student, the framework will still help. Because the first step is keeping the audience in mind. The music part of it will be according to the kids in mind. Yes, Navneet.
Yeah, thanks a lot. The best part of this session is I learned that a speech is a combination of 3 table topics. That is something new to me. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. But make sure it doesn't end up that, because if there are 3 parts and then you just have those 3 parts without the transition, it could backfire.
And also include music also.
Indeed. If you have that, the entire impact in the creative part, that's the reason I said, each one of you all right now in this room, we have 15 other people, and each one of you all, if I give you a topic to deliver a session, let me tell you, each one of you all can deliver a session on the topic, the same topic, in 15 different ways. And let me tell you, each one of them can be as impactful as every other person who's going to be delivering. So the idea is not about what topic you're doing, what topic are you delivering. Look at what you have in mind and look at the end result and how creative you can be. Again, when I said about the point 7, it's the creative things which I shared are limited to what I have experienced up until now. I've sung a song in a contest. I have cracked jokes. I've gone out of screen in a contest. I've done weird things, because I'm willing to experiment. You never know what kind of a message and how it can be impactful with the creative approach that you have. Else you can end up just being like most other people, saying your message. But impactful speeches is anything but just saying your message. Any other questions, anyone?
Yeah, I would like to ask, for new Toastmasters, how should they identify the potential topics? How to identify? Because many topics are there. When you sit for writing, you don't find the points. So how do, for example, one topic is there. For example, you in your YouTube, you said life is not a single frame picture, it is a motion picture. I heard you saying this. So if I want to make this as a topic, then how do you go about? How do you begin the framing the story, building the story?
Okay. Thank you for that wonderful question. Because this is one question which I've always asked. I've always been asked whether how do you find your topics? More often than not, people feel that you need to be a cancer survivor, or you need to have a broken leg, or you need to be a mountaineer, or you need to have had the destruction in life to have a soulful message. Touch wood, I've not had one. And yet I deliver speeches. Speeches, the ideas that you get are from a simple thing of your observations and reflections in everyday life. I have this habit of, there's a notepad. How many times have you experienced this thing that while you're driving or you're doing something, you got an idea, you got a joke, or you got something which clicked your mind. And by the time, in the next 15 minutes, when you reached somewhere where you can write it down or note it down or think, okay, this is a wonderful idea, you started to wonder, what was that? Kya tha? But what was it? We as humans experience at every minute observations that we are, reflections that we are having. Even while this last 1.5 hours that we have been interacting, there are 20 ideas that you have got, even while I'm speaking the words. If you do not note it down, 1 hour later, of the 20, you might be able to recollect only 1 or 2. Even if you look back at the recording and what was said and think that that instance I'll get that idea again, it won't come. The simple thing that I would like each one of you all who's beginning to write speeches and you feel that, okay, I don't have the subject matter, I don't have the substance, I don't have stories, I don't have instances, my life is very boring. You won't find a boring life than mine. But observe and make note. I have this on my phone, I have this ideas dump. I call this ideas dump. This has a dump of whatever I have written, spoken, or just text to speech or whatever is there. Speech to text is on the conversions. If I'm driving a bike and if I get an idea, I make sure to stop wherever I am, doing whatever I am, and just note that. Just that 2 lines. I'm not writing an entire essay. This is something which is this long right now, and this is of the last 1 week. I have a file in my system. If I may just show you, you'll be surprised of how much a normal boring person has in life to think about and write about on the basic instances. I'm just showing you so that you get an idea of how even a boring person like me can have so much to work on. You see this file? This is a file which has my random ideas for the last 15 years. The down arrow isn't ending for me. Every time I have to write a speech, search leadership, search pain, search friends, search nostalgia. Habits. I have a speech ready. Passion. I have a speech ready.
So how many speeches you have given so far?
In Toastmasters, I've given, if you talk of unique speeches, If you talk of uni speeches, I've given approximately 53 or 54, including 5 to 7 minute speeches, keynote addresses, question and answers, and education sessions like this. If you talk of repeat also, I've given over 200 speeches across approximately 103 clubs as of date.
Wow, that's great.
And my biggest accomplishment happened last week. I got an opportunity to deliver a speech. Again, it was a repeat. I didn't create one because I couldn't take a chance of experimenting with the honor that I got, a chance that I got. Last week, I delivered a speech in club number 1, chapter 1, Ralph C. Smedley, US.
I didn't get it.
The first club of Toastmasters in US, San Francisco. I got a chance because they opened up, suddenly there was a dropout and they opened up for an opportunity to deliver a speech in their club. And it came in some announcement somewhere. I took that chance and I delivered a speech in the first club of Toastmasters. That was like a bucket list for me. जीतना या कुछ नहीं पता नहीं है, वर्ल्ड चैंपियनशिप भी नहीं है, चलेगा. I want to deliver a speech there because I've delivered. If you go to my YouTube channel, I've done a speech on Ralph C. Smedley and what Toastmasters is. I'll share that link with Mallikarjun after the meeting. He can share it. And it's a 4.5 minute speech about the impact of what Toastmasters is and what we do. I created that video in tribute to Ralph C. Smedley. So just saying, the idea is for a boring person like me, if I can get ideas, observe, write, and build that into speeches. Every idea has a potential to build it up into a message that you can share with others. Nobody has an authority on a certain message because they don't have an authority on your experience, your story behind what is it. That's your expertise, I would say. All that matters is how much courage you have to share that message. Keep experimenting, keep delivering.
Sure.
So here's a 7-step process, a 9-step process that we talked about, wherein we begin with the purpose, the pointers, the broad pointers that we talked about, the substance, the closing, the opening, and the transitions. And then the creative process starts when we are adding the music to this entire story for every element of it. The step 8 is on the right side. Listen, fix the missing puzzles, get your time right based on how you're delivering and how much time you have to deliver. And finally, the last step on the left, which is about what's in the name. These are 9 steps. I'll be sharing this with Mallikarjun. He can share it in the WhatsApp group. Nikhil, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would say I think you're definitely not a boring person. Otherwise, you would have not spoken for 2 hours almost. So
observation,
yeah.
I would say. If I have a talent, I have a talent of being curious and observing.
Yeah. So we were kind of thinking after the educational session, probably we have to conduct a fun session or a TTM, but no, you took, yeah, it was a very good listening to all of you. Had such all of things in your mind, and you have used all the entire time to give that entire message to the audience completely. I really appreciate from the club and from my side, and thank you so much for giving your time. I would say from my side, what I heard at a summary completely is, I think to be a good speaker or to write a speech is to be an artist or bring out the artist in you. And everyone have that element of being an artist. And your steps will help us to become a better artist and give the better speeches. And that's what I felt. And you have been an artist today for yourself, of bringing out whatever you have, everything in the mind. And it was very resonating. So really thank you and appreciate, and thank you audience as well. You have been so much interactive. We're listening constantly with focus and all, and I was being always stuck to the screen listening to you. So thank you so much, and for making this such a successful educational session, and I hope we'll listen from you a lot of things and more in the near future. And thank you very much. So with this, I would forward back the stage to give back the stage to presiding officer of the day today, Toastmaster Mallikarjun. Thank you.
Yeah. So I would like to thank Rahul Jain for having a very interactive workshop, very good education session. We have learned a lot. Ralph Speedley said that it is not the number of words that matter in a speech, but the clarity of thought which the words express. So we have learned today how to make the speech more impactful by knowing all the entire structure, how to draft the new speeches. So we look forward for Rahul Jain to conduct more such interactive sessions with us. Yeah, thank you for coming for our education session.